My name is Terrance Barkan. I'm the Executive Director of the Advanced Carbons Council. We have been working with graphene and related nanocarbon materials since 2013 and have been active in the setting of international standards like the Graphene Classification Framework. Today, we are the largest and most important trade association for the advanced carbon sector, connecting more than 40,000 materials professionals worldwide. So one of the themes that's incredibly important is the distinction between what is a graphene nanoplatelet micronized graphite versus graphene. The ISO definition, the international definition of what graphene is and is not, is 10 atomic layers or less of sp2 bonded carbon. Now, many companies in the market will portray material as being graphene in a generic term, but it does not fit the ISO definition. So first of all, it's important to know that you're actually dealing with bona fide, genuine graphene materials, which are 10 atomic layers or less of sp2 bonded carbon. The same holds true for graphene oxide or for graphite oxide, which are similar but very different materials. And the same premise holds. Real graphene oxide is typically one or two layers of carbon by the nature of how it's produced, and will contain approximately 30 to 35% oxygen on average. You also have reduced graphene oxide, which is what it sounds like. It's graphene oxide that's had the oxygen reduced or removed from it, with a small remainder remaining for reduced graphene oxide. What is incredibly important when it comes to using any of these nanocarbon materials, whether it be graphene, graphene oxide, or reduced graphene oxide, is the consistency in production in batch-to-batch repeatability. You don't have to have perfection in these materials for them to function effectively, but you do need consistency and repeatability in batch-to-batch to get consistent results in your end applications. Graphene, graphene oxide, and reduced graphene oxide also need special expertise in how to disperse and administer them correctly. Otherwise, the results you get will not be effective, which is not the fault of the material, but it may be in the course of how it was dispersed, handled, or prepared. Therefore, it's important to work with subject matter experts that know how to make the material, how to handle it, and how to apply it in your particular use case or application. So the main application areas that we see being commercialized today include things like the construction industry with concrete and asphalt, coatings, so paints and other protective layers, composites, thermoplastics, and these types of applications, as well as in battery materials. These application areas are extremely interesting. And to give you an idea of the size and scope, we have calculated that if just 1/10 of 1% of the world's concrete market was using graphene as an additive, it would represent approximately 110,000 metric tons of graphene required to serve that market annually. The price of the material has become more affordable as companies have learned how to optimize their production processes, increase scale, and develop larger volume offtake partners. So the overall trend is for graphene to become more affordable. And because graphene is often used in very, very small percentages in end applications, it doesn't take much of a price reduction to make this material accessible to a much, much larger breadth of market. Since 2013, we have been tracking the evolution of the graphene market. And at that time, the biggest conundrum or challenge was simply to make the material. Today, we see commercial adoption taking shape as predicted. And what we see now is the commercialization phase of this material. The projections that we have over the next 3 to 5 years are looking at something between 100,000 to as much as 300,000 metric tons a year of graphene required across the main application areas I mentioned, being asphalt, concrete, coatings, plastic, composites, batteries, and electronics. It is difficult to assess because we know many companies are using graphene internally and not disclosing how much they're consuming, or they're vertically integrated and they're producing the graphene and using it directly into their products. The other challenge with a material like graphene is nobody is actually making anything out of graphene itself, but rather it's used as an additive to improve other materials and to strengthen or lighten the end products. When that is the case, for example, if we were putting graphene into automobile tires, it's either used in almost all of the tires or none of them. So, in the adoption curve, when graphene gets used and becomes a de facto ingredient in some of these application areas, you will see a very rapid adoption and increase in the amount that is sold. This is why making forecasts is difficult. But I can tell you, the stage that we're at right now is that many customers have gone through the trial and adoption testing phase and are putting the material now into products. We see that, for example, in polymers and paints, where more than 5 companies have product in the market selling paints with graphene as an additive for improved corrosion protection. When you see something like that happen, the material quickly becomes adopted across the industry because it raises the baseline performance of the traditional materials. So we're very excited to be in this adoption phase where companies have addressed the issues of production, quality, scale, and price. And we're at the final hurdle where customers make the adoption decision and consume at commercial scale.